They're one of the most recognizable groups in history. But who really are the Ashkenazi Jews? Most people assume they're direct descendants of the ancient Israelites. But what if that story, passed down for generations, isn't the full truth? What if their real origin isn't in the deserts of Judea, but on the windswept steppes of Central Asia? Tonight we unravel a theory that shook the world of history and identity. A theory that ties millions of modern Jews, not to Moses or Abraham, but to a forgotten empire that vanished almost overnight. This is the story of the 13th Tribe. In 1976, journalist and author Arthur Koestler published The 13th Tribe, a book that didn't just raise eyebrows, it set them on fire. His claim that the Ashkenazi Jews of Eastern Europe aren't descendants from ancient Israelites, but from a mysterious Turkic kingdom known as the Khazars. The Khazar Empire was no ordinary blip in the history books. Between the 7th and 10th century, it controlled a vast territory between Caspian and the Black Seas, modern-day Ukraine and southern Russia. It was wealthy, it was powerful, and it made a choice that shocked its neighbors. The Khazars' ruling class converted to Judaism. Not Christianity, not Islam, Judaism. A move so rare some historians still don't know what to make of it. Koestler believed that when the Khazar Empire collapsed, its Jewish converts didn't disappear, they migrated west, settling in Eastern Europe, and became ancestors of the modern Ashkenazi Jews. So could it be? Could millions of people today unknowingly trace their roots not to Jerusalem, but to a vanished empire on the Silk Road? Koestler didn't pull this theory out of thin air. Arab and Jewish sources all mention the Khazar conversion to Judaism. It was one of the most well-documented religious shifts in medieval history. But here's where things get heated. Mainstream historians and geneticists weren't convinced. In fact, many were furious. Modern DNA studies show a strong link between Ashkenazi Jews and the ancient Middle East, supporting the traditional narrative of descent from biblical Israelites. So does this disprove Koestler's theory? Maybe, but the story isn't so simple. The Khazars are a historical black hole. Their records, gone. Their culture, dispersed. Their empire, wiped off the map in the 11th century. That silence, those missing pages of history, have created a perfect breeding ground for theories, mysteries, and unfortunately, conspiracies. Koestler wasn't trying to stir up trouble. In fact, he was Jewish himself and said he hoped the book would combat anti-Semitism by reframing Jewish identity in a new light. But as with any idea this bold, people read what they want into it. So where does this leave us? We know the Khazars existed. We know they converted to Judaism. We know their empire vanished without a trace. We know the Ashkenazi Jews are real, vibrant communities with deep historical roots. But do those roots go back to ancient Israel or to an empire few have ever heard of? Here's the twist. We don't know what the Khazars called their homeland, but some people today just call it home. The 13th Tribe remains one of the most controversial books of the 20th century, loved by some, condemned by others, and ignored by most. But it raises a powerful question. What if the stories we tell about our past aren't the ones history actually wrote? You decide.